If you're altering your landscape for aesthetics, it can be challenging. I mean, often flowers are involved, but flowers are ephemeral, really. They come and they go, and even the shapes of the plants that you put in change over time. So, how would you create a system so that you could figure out what effect your designs would have at every point in the season? And of course, you need to make sure that the right plants go in the right place, don't interfere with each other. Um, for instance, allelopathy with walnuts and juglone. And then what about the color palettes and how do they move throughout the season? Well, um, I think the obvious thing is write 3D visualization software that allows you to simulate all these things. But given some people may not have the skills, the time for that, certainly one should check and see if such a thing exists. But as of when I checked, couldn't find such a thing. And certainly not for native pollinator plants. You can certainly pick ideas that people have used in sort of standard Western landscaping where certain flowers go together. But if you're trying to mix native plants, which is a newer thing, and what if you're trying to mix native plants with other things that aren't really part of such a thing? For instance, this Chicago fig, there's a plum there, haskap. If you were to mix that with aesthetics and flowers, what would you do? So pause for a bit, think about that. I'll be back with one solution. So in design, there's this often a tension between form and function. Well, I found this a pretty funny situation where let's call form function. So how can we, in one slice of time, express a whole color palette across a whole season? So this design is each plant is represented by a flower, and these are flowering plants. More interesting because otherwise it's just green. And you notice that there are petals, and petals are actually the month where in a temperate climate one might have flowers. And the way you use this is, let's look at this wild petunia here. You can see that in the first 2 months, April and May, it's green. And then June, July, and August, it has purple flowers, and then they go away and you're left with the green. Wild lupin has May, June, July of blue flowers. Wild lupin is 2 foot tall. Wild petunia is 1 foot tall. So in a way, you're able to express both height and 3D placement. You know, there's a tendency to place shorter things at the front, taller things at the back. So my particular case is I have a number of native plants. A number of them need full sun, but a number of them are vulnerable to deer and rabbits. This set are the six, well, I guess seven. There's six natives that are not vulnerable. So how would I arrange them? I happen to have a set of Siberian pea trees, 4 of them, so it sort of makes 3 rooms. So I've decided to say, hey, by looking at wild petunia and wild lupin, And oh, by the way, you can see on the bottoms of these their root structure. Thimbleweed has taproot with some rhizomes. False boneset is straight up taproot. Prairie dropseed is a fibrous mass. Now, you can see already the flaws in this. Prairie dropseed is a grass, not a flower. So, and there are various sorts of flowers. They don't all look like this. So you can't visualize it anywhere as well as writing a full simulation 3D visualization software. But again, hard to write those in under about 15 minutes. So one of the fun things is you can take your junk mail, because those envelopes, they already come with lots of folds. And so you get your origami and your snowflake cutting all together. So basically, I can almost match color palettes across time by looking at a single thing. So I see that we will start and there will be blue flowers in May, and then June and July we'll have both blue and purple, and then in August we'll have purple. And so, I like those two colors together. I like the fact that across almost the whole season there's something. So looking over here, we see thimbleweed and false boneset. June and July, thimbleweed has white flowers. August and September, false boneset has white flowers. So that's my choice for this first room, the second room. The third room is kind of interesting because part of this exercise is not just to use native flowers for their pollination, butterfly support, but the caterpillar support, so that caterpillars are a basis of the whole ecosystem, and they need stuff to eat, and so they need things that they've adapted to, of which prairie dropseed and flowering spurge are one. But Siberian peatree is not. This is obviously from Siberia, and insects in this area have not evolved to eat it. But it provides useful things for me, literally peas, as well as pollination services. So the flowering, let's see, we'll start May, June. Siberian peatree will have yellow blossoms, and flowering spurge will continue that, well, match it in June and continue it in July. And to keep the interest in this area, we have the prairie dropseed, which in August forms pink seed heads, and in September and October it turns a golden. The grass itself turns golden. So that should be interesting across the whole area. Now, another flaw of this is, of course, you want to often mass your flowers, design in drifts, and none of that is really reflected in this, but it is a quick way to sort of match up and figure out what you have and how it would work. I won't really do this again because now that I've visualized it, I can see it's actually fairly easy to visualize on a spreadsheet or a relational database. So that I can do in seconds. This one takes 15, 20 minutes, and it's pretty cool, but and I could see a nice little business for native native plants that based on your zip code in the United States, you would get a whole set of these flowers, if you want to call them, and it's kind of fun. There is a fun that we just don't have yet in 3D simulations, where using Legos and moving stuff around, and you can look from up and you can see how the views shift as you move across in space, because you're never going to be just looking straight on. That's something I've never seen in 3D simulations, nor the representation across time. Of course, you could actually speed time through it and watch the actual plants evolve. We have enough data to do that, as well as all the other facets of these things. The kinds of soil, the kinds of sun, their the types of caterpillars, the hummingbirds they attract, the butterflies, all those sorts of things. So, an interesting approach, I thought. Certainly fun, and a good way to use junk mail.